Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan and welcome to Pop Culture ComiX presents Captain Logan's Comic Book Week in Review. I only had one book in my personal pull list this week, so I'm going to review a few things I don't usually tackle, and everything just happens to be DC this week. Let's get started then with my one regular book, Red Robin number 18. This issue seemed a little weaker to me than what this book's been lately, but I think that's just because the last arc was so deeply integrated with the stuff happening in the main Batman books, and I was enjoying seeing so many familiar faces. Last issue, Tim was in Hong Kong looking for Cassandra Cain, which was just a treat. This time, Tim's hit list brings him to Russia, and he encounters a former Teen Titan, Red Star, who's a character I'm not real familiar with. He's acting suspicious as Red Robin explains that he's here to investigate Michalak, the leader of a huge corporation who might be involved with a supervillain group called the Society. Things get extremely complicated by the end as we find that the situation isn't exactly black and white, and it gets very murky as to who the good guys and who the bad guys are, which was good. I honestly wasn't immediately thrilled with this plot, mainly because Red Robin is going after someone I've never heard of. But what was really strong about this issue is being inside Tim's head. We get his thoughts as he strategizes through conversations with both Red Star and Michalak, like he's playing a game of poker. What should he reveal at what point? What intentions does he want to convey? And how can he manipulate the conversation to learn what he needs to know in each case? He's becoming a master strategist, both as Tim Drake and as Red Robin, and both personas require confidence, smooth talking, and diplomatic skills. I'm also really enjoying the chemistry between Tim and Tam Fox, who works as Tim's assistant both in and out of the costume, and serves a similar role as Lucius Fox does to Bruce Wayne. There is some extremely competently written corporate intrigue set up here that I think will become more realized and interesting next issue. There's a lot of setup here, and without giving away what happens on the last page, I have to say that it includes perhaps the funniest cliffhanger line I've seen in a long time. Something very unusual and out of nowhere happens, and Red Star says, "What has happened?" And then bold text at the bottom of the page reads, "Next issue, we find out what happened." Flash number 7. This is hands down my favorite issue this week. It's the beginning of a new story arc for the series, but it's fantastic as a standalone, and I'd recommend it for really anybody. It centers entirely on Captain Boomerang, who has fallen out of favor with the Rogues and is planning to do something that will make Captain Cold even more angry with him, which I won't give away because it's an important reveal. Rarely have I seen a comic focused on a villain do such a good job at making that villain a highly sympathetic character and believable within the context of the story. Jeff Johns expertly finds a balance between scenes in the present and in the past, where we get a really great origin for Captain Boomerang. The main theme of the book is given to us in the title, "What goes around comes around," and the boomerang is used as a metaphor for everything in life coming back to you. It's done ironically, but not in an irritating or contrived way. He does have a bit of a cliched background with his father, who isn't his real father, because his mother apparently had an affair before he was born, and so his father treats him badly, and that's a lot of why he takes a dark road and becomes a supervillain. But I wonder if Johns isn't making a point in giving him such a typical backstory. After all, it makes sense that a villain with a motif that immediately sounds pretty silly would have such a mundane and obvious history. That's what I loved about this issue. Johns finds a lot of clever ways to make the boomerang motif work both for the character and for the story, and also to call attention to the oddness of it. Here, Digger was sent boomerang after boomerang as a child by a boomerang company, and when he grew up, he sought out the company, and its founder, seeing how good he was with the boomerang, gave him a job, giving him the Captain Boomerang costume, and making him the company mascot. He did demonstrations for children, trying to get them excited about boomerangs, but the company didn't catch on and it went under. This really helps explain why his costume looks so hokey in a modern comic book, and I don't necessarily think explanations like this are necessary for characters who have been around for decades and have always looked a certain way, but it's neat when it's pulled off this well. I love how much affection Captain Boomerang has for the Rogues. He sees them as his family and seems to want nothing more than to be reunited with Captain Cold and the others. I found myself genuinely feeling bad for him, as it seems that this will never really happy for him, having to remind myself that he's a criminal and he misses his criminal gang, not a real family. He was never good enough for his father, and all he knows how to do is throw boomerangs, a skill that was never good enough for anyone but the Rogues. It's twistedly sad, and I love that feeling I get when a writer can make me want things to work out the way an arch-villain wants them to. It reminds us that real people are more complex than hero or villain, good guy or bad guy. Ultimately, we might get our perspective back when the Flash, or whoever it is, inevitably beats the bad guy. But at least for a moment, we can appreciate the complexities of a person's history that get them to such a point of desperation that crime isn't just an ill-considered choice, but in fact the only thing that makes them happy. Jeff Johns, of course, is also writing all Brightest Day, and in my opinion, this is better than any single issue of that series. Justice League number 15. This was not the place to jump into the series, and I was pretty lost at first, but I really enjoyed the focus on characters I haven't seen in a long time, and some of whom I didn't realize were even still being used, like Fire and Ice. There's some big stuff happening here, and it all centers on Max Lord, resurrected during Brightest Day, who wants revenge on Wonder Woman for killing him. The trouble is, not only can he not find her, but nearly everyone on Earth has been altered somehow to have never heard of Wonder Woman, with the exception of our heroes. And what's worse is that Max Lord is framing Captain Atom for the deaths of 1,000 people. I think my favorite thing about this issue is the opening pages, which recount Wonder Woman killing Max Lord and reminds us that she's a character willing to do the unthinkable when it's necessary. That's what really separates her from Batman and Superman. As different as those two characters are, neither is willing to kill, but on the rare occasion that she believes it's the only answer, Wonder Woman is, and I really like the way that's illustrated here. There's a heroes type plot unfolding here in which Captain Atom has seen a future where Max Lord kills Wonder Woman, which sets events into motion that turn the whole planet into a war zone, wars between superpowered people and regular humans alike. A lot of the ideas here reminded me of Kingdom Come, only that a future somewhat similar to that one is trying to be prevented. The only real criticism I have is that there's a lot of talking about what's happening, but not a lot of things really happening until the last couple pages of the issue. That was good for me because I felt like I was being brought into the loop, but I imagine this issue might feel a little draggy for anyone who's been following Justice League. Much of the issue is Captain Atom complaining about being framed and seriously thinking about killing Max Lord, and Booster Gold having to set him straight. But with what's set up right at the end, I imagine a lot of excitement is coming next issue. Superboy number 2. I read the first issue as well, and I gotta say, this is really fun stuff. Superboy stopping all kinds of supernatural weirdness in Smallville. It's a very simple book, and I like that about it. It's reminiscent of classic Superman stories, with some development from issue to issue, but it's not overly convoluted with tons of intricate plot twists. It all depends on how you like your serialized stories, and personally, I enjoy deeply interwoven stuff, but I also enjoy this, an overarching thread that connects episodic stories about Superboy facing familiar villains from the DC universe. I hope that trend continues. First we had Parasite, and here we get Poison Ivy, who claims she needs Superboy's help because something's wrong with all the plants, and she says she's lost her powers. You probably won't be surprised to find she's not telling him everything. Again, we've got good classic superhero themes here. He doesn't trust her, but he has a superhero code that won't let him say no to someone who needs his help for a good cause, even if that someone is Poison Ivy. And another classic idea is the superhero not wanting to endanger a sidekick, but finding himself in a situation where he needs that person to help him. In this case, it's his friend Simon, who revealed he knew Connor was Superboy last issue, and I can't help but give this away, so spoiler warning. But he gets Superboy out of a jam by using some of Parasite's DNA to create parasite frogs. That's right, frogs that look just like Parasite. I like a series that doesn't take itself too seriously, but still knows how to weave a good tale. And I'd say this is a good one for adult readers who like a little silly in their serious comics, but I also think it might be an appropriate one to get a kid started in on current comics. And finally, Knight and Squire number 3. If you like British humor or you have any kind of background in British history or Shakespeare, you really should pick this one up. And this issue stands alone nicely even if you haven't read the first 2 in this miniseries. This is one of the funniest things I've read in a while. It pokes fun at several famous kings and at our current culture by mixing those two things together. A British laboratory trying to outdo Star Labs resurrects Richard III and later several other kings. Richard actually speaks in rhyming couplets and gives asides to the reader, just like in Shakespeare's play, in which he reveals to us his plans to retake his kingdom. There's a moment where he tries to give one of these asides, and someone asks him who he's talking to, and even while he talks like this, he also talks about how much he hated Shakespeare. So Knight and Squire have to stop him from taking over England, after he puts together a gang of thugs and gets a motorcycle with a horse head on the front of it. He amasses support on Twitter and YouTube, as do some of the other kings, each of which is mercilessly made fun of for whatever he was most notoriously known for in history, like King John, who is caught on camera stealing from the poor and giving to the rich. I especially enjoyed this as I studied a lot of 16th century British history in Lytton College, and I thought it was a brilliant satire, poking fun at how much things have changed over the centuries and at how little we probably really understand of these historical figures. It seems like the book purposely exploits those areas that are most well known about each king, stuff you could find without going much further than their Wikipedia pages, poking fun at the public general disregard for history while recognizing that it's those who do appreciate history that will really enjoy this. It's whimsical and nonsensical, and I found myself laughing out loud more than once. Also out this week from DC, we have Detective Annual number 12, featuring Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson, and guest starring The Question, taking place in Paris as Batman Inc. continues recruiting. Fables number 100, a huge 100-page extravaganza. The Fables try to end Mr. Dark and return to Fabletown. And from Marvel, we have What If Wolverine Father, which is a one-shot. What if Wolverine had actually raised Daken from birth? And Thor number 618. Odin comes to Earth, and Thor has to deal with the consequences of bringing back Loki. And those are my news and reviews for this week. Thanks for watching, and I'm Captain Logan, wishing you pleasant reading and creative thinking.